Hi everyone. So we think this is perfect timing. We hope you all had good lunch because we're going to talk about food now. And I think the worst thing is to talk about food when you're hungry. So I hope we don't have that now. My name is Marie. I work with FoodLabs. We're a pan-European early-stage investor in food and ag tech. And today we're going to talk about the future of food because over the last decades we have faced many challenging situations that have shown that our food system is broken and how vulnerable it actually is. So we also know that food and agriculture are the main contributors for climate change, contributing 30% of global CO2 emissions, which is a bigger bunch than, for example, travel or logistics. So leveraging a more sustainable food ecosystem will also help making the planet more healthy. So tackling climate change, promoting planetary health, food will help us to get there. And we have today on stage three amazing founders who are exactly tackling the food system and how to make it more sustainable. So we have Katelijne, the founder of MicroHarvest. We have Maarten, the founder and CEO of Mosa meat, and Hermes from Paleo. So maybe let's start with you, Hermes. You're supporting producers of plant-based food to make their products tastier, better, more sustainable. What was your inspiration when you started the company?
To be honest, I get that question a lot. Where did you get the idea from? It's always hard to reconstruct an idea and the timing of that. But the basic reasoning behind it is that indeed, like the problems that you're describing, they're so huge. And I've always been engaged in finding solutions, like first in politics, science, and now by entrepreneurship. So I really want to contribute with Paleo to the solution. And indeed, if you look to the impact of livestock, well, it's huge. And you're mentioning climate change, but there are many other aspects, like land use. I mean, farmland, that's 50% of the area that is livable on the planet. It's not urbanization that is driving land use change, it's farming, basically, and especially the livestock part in that. So, well, to solve that, the idea is to provide an alternative for meat. And that's what Maarten and we are all working on. Different technologies, but basically providing a solution, adding to the solution for that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Maarten. You're producing a better beef. I think that's how you call it. Can you share a bit more how exactly that works?
Yeah, sure. So what you said, the impact of the food system on climate change is huge, and specifically of meat. Meat contributes 14.5% of all global greenhouse gas emissions. And the big contributor there is the cow, and the fact that we eat so much cows and the fact that they produce methane and just require a ton of resources in order to produce meat is a huge contributor to climate change. So we want to replace the cow, but we don't want to replace or change the end product. So we create beef, or we replace beef with beef. And we take cells from a living animal and we grow them into meat outside the animal's body. But it's exactly the same product. So we don't ask consumers to change their habits. They can just keep eating the beef that they're all, so in favor of. One could even say addicted, but it doesn't have all these negative externalities. So that's what we are aiming to do.
Cool. Kate, you're starting from a different angle. Both you launched with a B2B approach, and also you're focusing on feed and not food. Can you explain a bit more why you chose that approach to the market?
Yes, of course. So we work a bit differently. So what we do, we use world's most efficient protein production factories that are there, that you already know, bacteria. So you know from eating them in your yogurt or from your kimchi. So they are already used in food, but to change the taste or the texture, but they are very efficient in growing very fast, and they contain a lot of protein. So therefore, the most efficient protein factories. So we grow them in a bioreactor, and then we harvest them. So we harvest microbes. This is why we call it MicroHarvest. So we harvest them, and then we inactivate them, and then we make a powder out of it. So it's a powder like you have a pea protein or a soy protein, so we have a microbial protein. And we started doing this because really for the B2B ingredients market, because large companies like the Nestlé's in food, like Mars and Purina in pet food, they are really looking to also use alternative ingredients, so non-animal based. But there's nothing available except plant proteins. And they have some typical drawbacks on digestibility, on taste. So we wanted to provide this alternative because we are so efficient, we can really manage to get these volumes very, very fast and do this scale up very fast. So this is what we're focusing on, to be fast and to really supply those type of companies also with alternatives. And we are starting in feed. So one of the reasons there is because of our very nutritional value. So there's very good fit for feed because it's all about nutrients, of course. But also regulatory-wise, many of the products that we produce, they need to be checked if they are safe. Of course, I mean, we all support that, but that process takes a long, 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 long time, especially in Europe. And in feed, it's a little bit easier, so this is why one of the reasons also to start there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe a question to you who are focusing more on food for humans. There's certainly opinions out there who would always say, oh, this is nice, but this will always be a niche product for elite, too costly, too lifestyle thing. What's your reply to people who would be skeptical that this could ever be a big market?
Yeah. Well, my response is we are attacking a huge market, the beef market first. A cow, as mentioned, is super inefficient. So we are beating the cow at their conversion rate. And so with less input, we can create the same amount of meat. And with the rising demand of meat, we have a huge problem we have to solve. So we have to think in different approaches, different technologies. So our technology can cater to a huge demand. It's required to have new technologies. And we can be cheaper than conventional beef. So I think to the people that raise the arguments you just raised, I think we will start off as a niche product because of initial higher cost of goods, because we don't have the economies of scale. And we just can't produce large volumes in the beginning yet, but that will go down over time. And then we're in a perfect position to cater to the entire market. And there's even a question, is conventional livestock farming still required if we have that new infrastructure set up?
So a matter of time, basically.
It's a matter of time. It won't go overnight. You need to build a lot of factories. But yeah, some things make it even longer, like regulatory approval processes, which is frustrating, but we also want it to be done in a thorough way. But we're also looking outside of Europe, where there's quicker paths to market, which is one of the messages we should all think about, being here in Europe. But this is what the potential of this technology has. But it takes some time.
Yeah, if I may add to that. So I think there are two parts in the answer to that. First of all, the market is growing of alternatives, and especially in the flexitarian segment. I mean, that consumer group becomes really big. I mean, that's a group of people that says, look, we're craving for meat, but we just, well, we don't want all the disadvantages of it, and sometimes about ethical reasons, sometimes about health, but there is a concern. So that group is growing, so the demand is growing. When we talk to the food industry, I mean, that expectation is there also on their side, but they're looking to make their products better. I mean, if you look to the products today, you compare them to like 20 years ago, I mean, that's a big difference. But everyone knows we're not there yet. It just needs to be better. That's where also we come in the story with Paleo. We make like hyper-functional ingredients, myoglobin, so something that exists in meat, but you make it through a different procedure. through precision fermentation. So when you add those animal proteins present in very low concentration, you increase the meat experience of that final product. I mean, it's of course a different approach than what Maarten is explaining, but we need all, and like yours, but we need all these different solutions to really make that growing demand in, let's say, 10 years, when it's really going to explode, to make that happen.
So maybe just as a follow-up question, when will I be able, as a consumer, to buy your product? Where and at what price? Can you already give an outlook on that, roughly?
Well, outside of Europe, next year, in more premium restaurants.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, precision fermentation products are already being eaten. So, in fact, it's a proven technology. It's just going next level right now. So that's a bit of an advantage also of our technology. You need it at low inclusion. So the pricing is a bit less challenging. If you need few, you can make it a bit more expensive, right?
Speaking about timings, Kate, I think one of your missions is to have, I think you even said you're building the fastest protein factory ever. Why the focus on speed? Why is that so important?
If we think of how much protein is eaten in the world today, it's huge, 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 huge. So if we want to, if you see like how fast and how much, like how many cows you need to replace, it's humongous. So what you want to do is have a system which is very efficient, very fast. So for instance, we now have proven, so in a demo or pilot facility, however you want to call it, which is like 1 tennis court big. If we produce there for 1 day, we produce the same amount of raw protein as 200 chickens. If you produce for 1 month, we produce the same amount of protein as you would grow 31 years on the same tennis court soy. If we produce 1 year, we produce the same amount of protein as 1.2 million sardines. So if you think that, okay, we want alternative proteins, but we cannot produce even more soy because it will go at the cost of the land and of our Amazon, you need to have an alternative solution. So I think that's very important. We use 80 million tons of fish meal. So if you can replace that, you can have very efficient source of fish, which is much less harmful for the ocean. And these are things, if we want to achieve that in 2050, we need to get that going tomorrow. So we are really focusing on, okay, we want to drive this impact at scale, because you can be sustainable, but if you cannot scale, there's no impact. So we're really focusing on that, and to do that as fast as possible in production way, but also in speed to market.
Very cool. So as we heard from you now, you have your first scale-up facility that you've built, and also you also kind of very developed in like how you're producing a product. Maybe you can, like one or two of you could share a bit, because at one point you're moving from an R&D company to an actual product company. So maybe you can share a thought or two, what kind of challenges that brings and how you mastered that.
Yeah, we just opened our first industrial-sized production facility 2 weeks ago in Maastricht, not too far from here. And you just get into a different ballpark when it comes to fundraising, etc. And for these type of novel technologies, you have to deal with, a different level of stakeholders, and that's challenging. It's new. It's scary for a lot of people. So you're getting from the promise into the reality stage, which is super exciting. And we're doing it with a team of 160 people. But now this new step, yesterday I heard the analogy of getting to the next level of a computer game. And we just reached the next level, and okay, let's get to it. And it's more difficult than the previous level, but it's kind of a nice analogy. And we're now just next level, and we have many levels to come, but this is one of them.
Very cool, thank you. Our time is almost up. Maybe one more general question for anyone in the audience who would like to educate themselves about the future of food. How can we make the food system more sustainable? Is there anything you could recommend for people to read, check out, a book, a newsletter, a podcast, anything you can recommend for anyone who wants to inform themselves around the topic?
I think I think fermentation, which is a technology which is as the basis for all of us, is going to be very important for our future food systems. And I think the Good Food Institute has done a very nice job in making some industry reports, explaining the technology, explaining the different technologies. You heard biomass fermentation, precision fermentation, cultivated meat. So they're really well in explaining that. So I would definitely recommend. They also have very good YouTube movies if you don't want to read. So that's also good.
That's a great resource. And try to translate it to your own behavior today. You can already make impact today by just thinking about what you put on your plate. And that's an easy switch, and it does make an impact.
Yeah, and if you have a new idea, also try to explore it maybe as an entrepreneur. I mean, it's also something that I like sharing to others. It's a very honest and humble thing to say, but a few years ago, I had never heard of venture capital. I didn't know what it was. And now I'm negotiating with investment funds. So, I mean, give yourself also the time to learn and to bring your new idea to solve a problem into practice.
These are so nice closing words. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And thank you for everyone for joining the conversation.
Thanks for having us.